Consider this paradox. The more precisely we measure the fundamental constants of our universe, the more astounded we become. The gravitational constant, the speed of light, the charge of an electron, each calibrated with such exquisite precision that the slightest variation would render life impossible. Yet many claim that science eliminates the need for God. But what if this conclusion represents not rigorous thinking, but intellectual laziness? What if authentic scientific inquiry, pursued with mathematical honesty, leads us not away from the divine, but directly toward it? In my years of experimental work with atmospheric pressure and geometric proofs, I discovered that nature speaks in mathematical language so elegant and precise that it demands explanation. Today, we shall examine how the very method that reveals nature's secrets simultaneously unveils the fingerprints of an infinite intelligence. The same rigorous approach that led me to formulate probability theory and design calculating machines now compels us to confront the most profound question of all: does the universe bear the signature of its creator? Prepare to discover why the greatest scientific minds throughout history found in their equations not atheism, but awe, not meaninglessness, but mathematical poetry that sings of its author. Chapter 1. The mathematical universe demands a mathematician. The first evidence emerges from mathematics itself, a truth I discovered through my work with conic sections and the arithmetic triangle. Why should the universe operate according to mathematical principles? When I studied the properties of geometric figures, I discovered truths that exist independent of physical reality. The ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter remains constant whether we draw circles in sand or contemplate them in pure thought. Yet remarkably, these abstract mathematical relationships govern physical reality with absolute precision. Planetary orbits follow elliptical equations described by Kepler. Light propagates according to wave mathematics that predict interference patterns with stunning accuracy. Atomic structures obey quantum mechanical formulas of breathtaking complexity and beauty, determining everything from chemical bonds to stellar fusion. This correspondence between mathematical abstraction and physical reality is so profound that Einstein called it unreasonably effective. But is it truly unreasonable, or does it point to a fundamental truth? A mathematical universe implies a cosmic mathematician. Random processes cannot generate mathematical elegance. Consider the Fibonacci sequence appearing in flower petals, spiral galaxies, and nautilus shells. Chaos cannot produce the intricate equations that govern everything from DNA replication to galactic rotation. When physicists discover that fundamental particles interact according to group theory, or that spacetime curves follow Einstein's field equations, they encounter mathematical structures of extraordinary sophistication. The very fact that human minds can comprehend these equations suggests we were created by the same intelligence that embedded them in nature's fabric. This isn't coincidence, it's evidence. The universe doesn't merely contain mathematics, it is mathematical at its deepest level. Every successful physics equation reveals that reality thinks mathematically. And mathematical thinking requires a mind capable of conceiving infinite precision and eternal relationships. The cosmos speaks in numbers because it was authored by the ultimate mathematician who thinks in perfect equations. Chapter 2. The fine-tuning argument through probability theory. Let us apply the same probability theory I developed for my correspondence with Fermat to cosmic constants. The mathematical precision required for life's existence defies every reasonable notion of chance. The force of gravity must be calibrated within 1 part in 10 to the power of 40 for stars to form and burn stably, too strong, and stars collapse immediately, too weak, and they never ignite nuclear fusion. The strong nuclear force requires precision of 1 part in 10 to the power of 50 to prevent either atomic collapse or nuclear instability that would make chemistry impossible. The cosmological constant demands accuracy of 1 part in 10 to the power of 120 to allow for a universe neither collapsing instantly nor expanding too rapidly for matter to coalesce into galaxies and stars. These numbers represent precision beyond human comprehension. Imagine trying to hit a target 1 inch wide from a distance of 14 billion light-years, that approximates the accuracy required for just one of these constants. But life requires all of them to be perfectly calibrated simultaneously. What is the probability that dozens of independent constants would align by chance to permit life? The calculation yields odds so astronomically small that no rational person would accept them in any other context. If I told you that shuffling a deck of cards randomly produced the same sequence 50 consecutive times, you would conclude the game was rigged. Yet the universe's fine-tuning is infinitely more improbable. Some propose the multiverse hypothesis, infinite universes with randomly varying constants, making our life-permitting universe inevitable through sheer numbers. But this explanation violates both Occam's razor and scientific methodology. It postulates infinite unobservable entities to avoid acknowledging one, God. Moreover, even infinite random universes require laws governing their generation, meta-laws that themselves demand fine-tuning. The multiverse merely pushes the design question back one level without resolving it. The simplest, most elegant explanation remains the most probable, and intelligence calibrated these constants intentionally. Probability theory, honestly applied, points toward theism with overwhelming statistical confidence. Chapter 3: The Information Revolution Confirms Design. Modern molecular biology has revealed something unprecedented in my era. Life operates through informational codes of staggering complexity that dwarf any human achievement. DNA contains digital information more sophisticated than any computer program, storing instructions for building, maintaining, and reproducing living organisms. A single bacterial cell processes information using algorithms that make our most advanced software appear primitive by comparison. The human genome contains roughly 3 billion base pairs, equivalent to a library of 750 books, each containing 500 pages of pure information. But unlike human books, this biological text is self-reading, self-correcting, and self-reproducing. Here we encounter a fundamental principle I learned through mathematical reasoning: information always originates from intelligence. In my work on probability, I discovered that meaningful sequences cannot arise from random processes. Random mutations can corrupt or copy existing information, but they cannot generate new, meaningful information. Yet evolution supposedly creates unprecedented biological information through purely natural processes, violating everything we observe about information generation. When archaeologists discover encoded symbols on ancient stones, they never conclude these arose from erosion patterns. When cryptographers encounter meaningful sequences, they assume intelligent origin because experience teaches that information requires informers. Consider the impossibility facing naturalistic evolution. A single functional protein requires a specific sequence of amino acids, often hundreds of units long, arranged in precise three-dimensional configurations. The mathematical probability of generating even one average-sized protein by random processes exceeds 10 to the power of 164, a number far greater than all atomic interactions possible since the universe began. But life requires thousands of coordinated proteins working in synchronized harmony. Each enzyme must not only fold correctly but also interact properly with other proteins, DNA, RNA, and countless molecular machines. The probability calculations become so astronomically improbable that invoking chance becomes mathematically irresponsible. Information science confirms what genetics reveals: life's code requires a programmer of infinite intelligence and creativity. Chapter 4: The Limits of Materialist Reductionism. Scientific materialism claims that reality consists only of matter and energy interacting through natural laws. But this philosophy faces insurmountable logical problems when examined with the same rigor I applied to geometric proofs. Consider consciousness itself, the very awareness by which materialists formulate their theories. How does electrochemical brain activity generate subjective experience? Why should material processes produce inner awareness rather than simply executing functions without felt experience? The hard problem of consciousness remains unsolved because materialism lacks conceptual resources to bridge the explanatory gap between objective neural activity and subjective mental states. Materialists can map brain regions, measure neural firing patterns, and correlate brain states with mental experiences, but they cannot explain why there should be any inner experience at all. This isn't merely a current limitation, it's a categorical impossibility within materialist framework. Furthermore, materialism cannot account for abstract objects that science requires, mathematical truths, logical principles, and natural laws themselves. These exist independently of physical instantiation yet govern all physical processes. The number 7 doesn't exist in spacetime, yet mathematical relationships involving 7 remain objectively true across all possible worlds. Logical principles like non-contradiction aren't located anywhere physically, yet they constrain all reasoning, including the reasoning that led to materialist conclusions. If reality consists only of matter and energy, where do these immaterial truths reside? The materialist faces an impossible choice: deny the objective reality of mathematics and logic, thereby destroying science, or admit immaterial realities exist, opening the door to theistic possibilities. Moreover, materialist determinism undermines rational thought itself. If our beliefs result entirely from chemical reactions determined by physics rather than logical evaluation of evidence, then believing materialism itself becomes merely another chemical event, not a conclusion reached through evidence and reasoning. This creates a self-defeating circularity that destroys the rational foundation materialism claims to defend. Consciousness, mathematics, logic, and rationality all point beyond purely material explanations toward mind as a fundamental feature of reality, precisely what theism predicts. Chapter 5: The emergence of complex systems requires intelligence. Complexity science reveals that sophisticated organized systems cannot arise through undirected processes alone, a principle I discovered through my work with mechanical calculating devices. Consider what makes complex systems functional: integrated information processing, coordinated subsystem interactions, hierarchical organization, error correction mechanisms, and goal-directed behavior. Living cells exhibit all these characteristics to degrees that surpass human engineering capabilities. When I designed the Pascaline, I needed to carefully coordinate gears, wheels, and springs to achieve reliable calculation. Each component required precise specifications, proper materials, and exact positioning. Remove any essential part, and the machine ceases functioning. Yet living systems demonstrate integration far exceeding any human machine. The bacterial flagellum motor operates at nearly 100% efficiency, containing dozens of precisely coordinated protein components: a rotor, stator, drive shaft, universal joint, and propeller. This molecular machine rotates at 17,000 RPM, can reverse direction in a quarter turn, and assembles itself automatically. Such irreducible complexity cannot arise through gradual Darwinian modification because intermediate stages provide no survival advantage. A non-functional flagellum offers no benefit over no flagellum at all. This isn't merely an argument from ignorance but a positive argument based on our understanding of complex systems. Engineers know that sophisticated machines require intelligent design because we observe the design process directly. We never observe functional complexity arising spontaneously from unguided interactions. When archaeologists discover ancient machines, they infer intelligent creators even without witnessing the creation process, applying uniform principles of reasoning. Yet living organisms contain molecular machines far more sophisticated than any human invention. The ATP synthase motor produces cellular energy through rotational mechanics. DNA replication machinery unzips, copies, and repairs genetic information with extraordinary fidelity. Protein folding systems create three-dimensional structures following complex algorithms. Applying the same reasoning used throughout science and engineering, these biological machines point to an intelligence far exceeding human capabilities, an intelligence capable of designing systems at the molecular level with precision we cannot achieve even with our most advanced nanotechnology. Chapter 6: The Convergence of Independent Lines of Evidence. The cumulative case for theism emerges from multiple independent lines of scientific evidence converging on the same conclusion, following the pattern of reasoning I learned through geometric demonstration. The mathematical nature of physical reality, fine-tuning of cosmic constants, information content of biological systems, the existence of consciousness, emergence of complex functional systems, and the intelligibility of nature itself all point toward intelligence as the best explanation. This convergence follows the pattern of successful scientific theories. We don't believe in electrons because of one experiment, but because diverse phenomena, from cathode rays to chemical behavior to electrical conductivity to quantum mechanics, all find their best explanation through electron theory. Each line of evidence supports the others, creating a web of mutually reinforcing observations. Similarly, theism provides the most coherent explanation for the full range of scientific observations. Critics attempt to address each line of evidence separately, proposing different explanations for mathematical elegance, anthropic principle, fine-tuning, multiverse, biological information, evolution, consciousness, emergence, and complexity, natural selection. But this strategy fails to appreciate how these phenomena interconnect and mutually reinforce each other. A theory that explains all observations with a single coherent framework demonstrates greater explanatory power than multiple ad hoc hypotheses addressing isolated puzzles. Moreover, materialism faces what philosophers call the problem of recalcitrant evidence, observations that contradict materialist predictions. If reality were fundamentally materialistic, we would expect mathematical relationships to be approximate rather than exact, constants to vary randomly rather than displaying fine-tuning, information to degrade rather than increase in complexity through natural processes, consciousness to be absent rather than universally present in complex systems, and complex functional systems to be rare rather than ubiquitous throughout biology. Yet we observe precisely the opposite pattern across all domains of scientific investigation. The probability that materialism could explain all these contrary observations approaches zero, while theism predicts exactly what we find. This isn't wishful thinking but rational inference based on the weight of evidence examined through the same methods that validate all scientific conclusions. Chapter 7: The Harmony Between Faith and Scientific Inquiry. The supposed conflict between science and faith represents a modern myth that distorts both domains, contradicting everything I learned through my own integration of mathematical reasoning with spiritual conviction. Historical examination reveals that science flourished in Christian cultural contexts precisely because Christianity provided the intellectual foundation for scientific inquiry. The belief that nature operates according to rational, discoverable laws stems from the conviction that a rational God created an orderly universe comprehensible to minds created in His image. Consider the foundational assumptions required for science, that nature operates according to consistent laws rather than arbitrary caprice, that human reason can comprehend these laws despite our finite limitations, that truth exists independently of human opinion or cultural preference, that the universe exhibits mathematical beauty worth investigating, and that knowledge is valuable for its own sake. These assumptions find their deepest justification in theistic worldview. An atheistic materialist universe provides no guarantee that these assumptions should be true. If humans are merely chemical machines shaped by evolutionary processes aimed at survival rather than truth, why should our cognitive faculties reliably track reality beyond immediate survival needs? If the universe resulted from random processes, why should it exhibit mathematical elegance that appeals to human aesthetic sensibilities? If truth is relative to evolutionary circumstances, Why should scientific investigation reveal objective facts? If matter and energy constitute the only reality, why should abstract mathematical relationships have any special significance? The practice of science presupposes metaphysical commitments that theism supports and materialism undermines. Furthermore, the greatest scientific pioneers, Newton, Kepler, Galileo, Boyle, Maxwell, Pasteur, Mendel, were motivated by theistic convictions. They pursued science because they believed God's handiwork deserved careful study. Their faith didn't hinder scientific discovery, it inspired and directed it toward fruitful investigation. Far from conflicting with faith, authentic scientific investigation reinforces theistic conclusions. The more we discover about nature's mathematical beauty, informational complexity, fine-tuned design, and rational comprehensibility, the more reasons we find for wonder and worship. Science reveals not a cold, mechanical universe, but a cosmos pregnant with meaning, purpose, and transcendent intelligence, a universe that bears the unmistakable signature of its creator in every equation, every constant, and every biological system. Conclusion. The evidence is overwhelming when examined with the same mathematical rigor I applied to atmospheric pressure experiments and probability calculations. Authentic scientific inquiry, pursued with intellectual honesty and logical consistency, points not away from God but directly toward Him. The mathematical universe requires a cosmic mathematician who thinks in perfect equations. Fine-tuned constants demand an intelligent calibrator capable of precision beyond human comprehension. Biological information necessitates a divine programmer who writes sophisticated code in DNA. Consciousness transcends all material explanation, pointing to mind as fundamental reality. Complex systems exhibit the unmistakable hallmarks of intelligent design at every level, from molecular machines to cosmic architecture. These multiple lines of evidence converge on a single, coherent conclusion through cumulative reasoning. Reality is the product of transcendent intelligence whose capabilities infinitely exceed human understanding. The supposed conflict between science and faith dissolves when we recognize that both seek truth through honest investigation guided by reason and evidence. True science and genuine faith are natural allies, not enemies, because both acknowledge that reality extends beyond purely material processes to include purpose, meaning, design, and intelligence. I challenge you to approach spiritual questions with the same intellectual rigor you bring to scientific investigation. Apply probability theory to life's ultimate questions with the same mathematical honesty I used in my correspondence with Fermat. Examine the evidence for divine design with the same careful attention to detail you use to evaluate any scientific hypothesis. You may discover, as I did through years of mathematical and experimental work, that the path of rigorous reason leads not to atheism, but to awe before the magnificent intelligence revealed in every equation, every constant, and every biological system that science uncovers.